bereavement group. How can I not talk about God in bereavement, in helping someone who lost their wife or husband? So I said, well, I'm not going to specifically go up there and stand on a footstool or something, but if somebody asks me about my faith, I'm going to share it. And so I said, okay, we'll do what I can in this environment. And then I started my own faith-based grief support group in my parish. And we do that we do that spring and fall for 8 weeks at a time. This other one we do for 52 weeks of the year. So I live and breathe my faith. And I think that's what Vincentians do. But we can't just be in our own little world doing whatever we want. We have to follow the teachings of the church. And the teachings that we have to follow, because it really defines how we're made up, what makes us tick, is what's called Catholic social teaching. And the Catholic social teaching comes to us through the apostles, through the bishops, through the church. And it's aligned with the St. Vincent de Paul Society's mission to address social justice issues and to help the poor. Of each other. You can't have one without the other. It is like the lifeblood that pounds in our veins. Why do we do this? Because the faith that we have through Jesus Christ, through our baptism, says, you've done baptisms, and you've done baptisms, and you've done baptisms. I have the great joy of I will be baptizing my great nephew in 2 weeks. And my gospel reading that day is always the same one, where the man asked Jesus, what are the great commandments? What shall I do to know that I'll have eternal life? And the scripture reading, Jesus answers and it says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. These are the two greatest commandments that he told to the scribe. That is what we live and breathe. That's what's pumping in our veins. And it comes to us through the Catholic social teachings. And the first thing that Catholic social teaching teaches us is about human dignity. First of all, that all human life is sacred. Next weekend is Pro-Life Sunday. And I'll be standing out in front of the liquor store, just with my collar on, and just saying a little prayer for those that are struggling, for the lost children, for the pregnant teens that don't know what to do. I'll tell you a story about that at lunch later, about that one. And it also involves the inherent dignity of the human person. The dignity of the human person is the foundation of a moral vision for all of society. It's not, we call them the marginalized. And I told one of my deacon friends the other day what it really means. And he unfortunately lost his wife to ALS a few months ago. And he's really tormented and torn apart. And I'm trying to minister to him as a brother deacon. And I said, you are become the marginalized. Well, what's a marginalized? Does anybody here know what the word marginalized means?
Shoved to the side.
Shoved to the side.
On the edge, yeah.
On the edge. So if you remember when you were a kid and you got pieces of paper at school, there was a little red line down the side and the 3 holes punched on the side. All of society lives in the middle of the page. But if you're marginalized, you're out here in the margins. And when you're focusing your eyes, did anybody have to do an eye test to see, your vision range? What does the person say? Stay focused on the center of the page. Well, if you're focused at the center where the dot is, how are you going to know what's going on in the margins? So if you're pushed to the margins by society, somebody has to go out there and get you and bring you back in. That's what we do. Okay? These two beliefs is the foundation of our principles, Catholic social teachings. But there's also rights and responsibilities. Every person has a fundamental right to life and a right to those things required for human decency. And we have the duty and responsibility to one another and our families and society at large to bring them those gifts. It's not a gift, it's a right. Why shouldn't that person be able to educate their children properly? Why shouldn't they have the opportunity of letting their kid learn how to skate? Why shouldn't that person have the opportunity to eat properly instead of going and buying Cheerios and Fruit Loops and bread and not having fresh vegetables and good, strong, good protein? It's not fair. Just because I'm poor, that doesn't mean I'm a second-class citizen. The options for the poor and the vulnerable. Catholic teaching proclaims that the basic moral test of our society is how our most vulnerable members are faring. So, remember in the old days we used to say Canada had the just society. We wanted a just society for Canada, for the world. But we are going to be ranked in history when your great-great-great-grandchildren look at the history books and say, what was Canada like in the year 2017, 2018? Did they look after the poor? Was it a just society? Did everybody have the chance to go to school, whether they had the money or not? Did they all have good food to eat? Did they have a decent place to sleep? Hamilton, we still don't have a decent place to sleep for a lot of people. A lot of people still on the street. We need to put the needs of the poor and the vulnerable first, because this is how we will be judged. You know the story about we're coming up pretty soon to the end of time reading. World Day of the Poor is just before Feast of Christ the King. Why is that? 33rd Sunday in Ordinary Time. Those are the readings of the end times. Where we're presented to the Lord and He's going to ask, what did you do for Lazarus of your day? Did you ignore him? Did you walk by him on the street? Maybe you did give him a little something. Maybe you didn't. That's how we're going to be judged. And through Catholic social teaching, we develop our own spirituality, we call it Vincentian spirituality. And this teaches us to be like Christ, who identified himself with the poor. But we must also see Christ in the poor and in those in need. When I went to the National Convention in Quebec City, I sat across from someone at the dinner, and I told her that, we see Christ in the poor. She didn't know what I was talking about. This was a Vincentian with a lot of experience in our ministry. Well, what do you mean you don't see Christ in the poor? Well, I am Christ going to the poor, yeah, that's for sure. But you also have to see Christ in the poor. Do you see the wounds of Christ in that person? We did a spirituality reading during Lent. I am Veronica wiping the face of Jesus. Do you see the face of Jesus in that person? Are you helping to cure their wounds, whether it be physical, emotionally, financially? We have to see Christ in the poor. But we can't just wish it upon them and say, okay, it's in my mind and it's in my heart. We got to get the rubber boots out. We got to put the boots on and go and live what we call the works of mercy. So there's what we call the corporal or more physical works of mercy and the spiritual works of mercy. These aren't things that we invented, people. This is from Catholic social teaching. Okay? But it's all based on the mercy of God. If you don't understand the mercy of God, how can we give mercy to other people? How can we be deliverers of Christ's mercy to others? So the mercy of God is not an abstract idea, but a concrete reality in which we reveal His love as of that of a father or mother, moved to the very depths of our love for their children. That's what Pope Francis tells us to do. We have to see ourselves as God, flowing that mercy like a father would to his son, like the prodigal son with his father, to the children of God. Because God can't come down and do it anymore. He came once and he went back. So he'll come back later. But in the meantime, it's your job to do what I was doing. So God's river of mercy never runs dry, because it always finds people who give testimony to it in everyday life. Never runs dry, but sometimes it turns into a trickle. Unless we keep our faith life, our sacramental life, going to Mass, praying every day, receiving the sacraments, especially reconciliation and the Eucharist, how can we get that grace? Okay? For those of you that are married and those who are ordained, those are never-ending, perpetual graces that come to us. Every time I say, oh God, what my wife going to yell at me now about?
That's a grace.
That's a grace. God saying, I'm showering it down on you so you can listen and change your life, because she's right. You left the junk on the table again and you're supposed to put it away. Right? Holy orders. Every time we serve at the altar, every time we go out and do our ministry, every time we come here. We didn't do anything here before we did morning prayers. I didn't even leave my room before morning prayers. And we'll do evening prayers as well. So faith life, prayer life is important. Jesus identified himself to the thirsty and the naked, the stranger, the sick, the imprisoned. All of those is where we're supposed to go. And we show them gestures of kindness, patience, and it's a vocation or a call to be answered, which cannot stop at material needs as well. So there are the corporal works of mercy, and I'll just list them off for you. I've actually got a handout for you that lists them, so you don't need to write them all down. So the church says that the 7 corporal works of mercy are to feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, clothe the naked, shelter the homeless, and visit the sick, visit the imprisoned, and bury the dead. We'll go back and talk about the spiritual works of mercy as well. Welcome the stranger is a derivative of that. And the Benedictine monks have actually taken on themselves to live the teaching from Matthew 25. Let all guests who arrive be received like Christ, for he is going to say, I came as a guest and you received me. But when we do our home visits, it's like they're becoming our guests in our world. Okay? I know we're guests in their home, but now you've brought the world of Jesus Christ to them. So they become your guests as well. Did you ever see that when you do a home visit? That you are the host. Okay? They are the host in your world of Jesus Christ. It's something new to them maybe even. But let them be comfortable with that. Welcome the stranger. Make them comfortable in the presence of Christ. Spiritual works of mercy. Bear wrongs patiently. Patience is the expression of God's mercy. How many times have we come out of a meeting and go, oh, that was a waste of time. I didn't get anything done there. And 5 minutes later, somebody will call you up. Oh, thanks for doing that at the meeting. That was the greatest meeting I've ever been at in my life. Okay. God did something. I didn't do anything. Right? Or we'll do a homily, right? The deacons know. We'll do a homily and say, oh, no one was listening. There was a kid was screaming and no one got anything out of that. 3 weeks later, I'm back at the church and somebody comes up to me at the back of the church. You know, Deacon, that homily you said 3 weeks ago and it was great and I used that and I really needed to hear those words. And they're going, what the heck are you talking about? I remember what I did an hour ago, let alone 3 weeks ago. And well, what you said about this, you know, I needed to hear those words that day. So all we're told to do is be instruments of God, get out of the way, and let God do what he needs to do. Right? Imitate the patience of Jesus. So we know there's physical poverty, everybody knows that, and the corporal works of mercy addresses that. But there's also what we call cultural poverty. with illiteracy as its root. This includes the absence and lack of educational opportunities and the lack